In the bustling heart of Seoul's corporate jungle, where glass towers pierced the smoggy sky like accusatory fingers, TNT Mobile Media's executive floor hummed with the kind of tension that could curdle coffee. Do Min-ik, the sharp-minded director of the mobile media division, sat at the head of a mahogany conference table, his tailored suit as impeccable as his reputation for dissecting competitors like a surgeon with a grudge. Around him, a circle of stone-faced board members nursed their agendas, their whispers laced with the scent of impending mutiny. Min-ik's prosopagnosia, his secret curse of face blindness, had been gnawing at him for weeks, turning familiar colleagues into anonymous specters. But today, in this high-stakes directorate meeting, he masked it with his trademark cool, his voice slicing through the air like a blade. The agenda was brutal: a vote to oust him as CEO in waiting, fueled by whispers of his erratic decisions post-accident. Min-ik's childhood friend and ally, Gi Dae-ju, was absent, tied up in negotiations across town, a fact that left Min-ik's defenses thinner than rice paper. As the chairman droned on about quarterly losses, Min-ik's mind raced. He needed a miracle, or at least a distraction. That's when the door burst open. Young Gal-hee, his recently fired secretary, stumbled in like a whirlwind in sensible flats in a rumpled cardigan that had seen better decades. Her hair was a bird's nest of frizz, her glasses askew, and in her hand, she clutched a half-eaten sandwich as if it were a shield. Gal-hee wasn't supposed to be here. Her contract had ended that morning in a curt email from HR, courtesy of Min-ik's pre-blindness pettiness. But she'd come anyway, driven by a gut twist of worry after overhearing a janitor mutter about the boss looking peaky. She hadn't planned to interrupt, just peek in, maybe leave a note. But seeing Min-ik's pallor, the way his fingers drummed the table like a countdown to collapse, she panicked. "Director Do," she blurted, her voice a squeak that echoed off the walls. The room froze. Suits swiveled, eyes narrowing at this disheveled intruder who smelled faintly of instant ramen. You forgot your medicine. And your lunch. I mean, not that you eat like a normal person, but, oh God, is that blood on your collar?" It wasn't blood, it was a smudge from his earlier accident, the balcony fall he'd barely survived, courtesy of a masked assailant who'd vanished into the night. But in the fluorescent glare, it looked damning. The chairman's gavel hovered, ready to strike her down, but Gal-hee, bless her chaotic heart, barreled on. "He's been working non-stop. Look at him, he's about to keel over. And those reports, they're faked. I saw the ledgers myself. Lies, mostly." Gal-hee had glimpsed no ledgers, but desperation breeds fiction. The board erupted, accusations flying like confetti at a funeral. Min-ik, caught off guard, felt a wave of vertigo crash over him. His vision blurred, faces melting into a Monet mess, and his chest tightened like a vice. He was having a reaction, the kind his doctor warned about, stress triggering a full-body revolt from the trauma. Without intervention, it could end in another fall, another hospital bed. He gripped the table, willing the world to steady. Gal-hee, sensing the shift like a mother hen spotting a wobble, abandoned subtlety. She darted to his side, knocking over a water pitcher in the process. Splash. The icy deluge hit Min-ik's lap, jolting him upright. "See, even the water knows you're overheating," she babbled, shoving her sandwich into his hand while fumbling in her oversized purse for the epinephrine auto-injector she'd swiped from the office first aid kit that morning, just in case, she'd told herself. The board watched, aghast, as this nobody jammed the needle into his thigh with the precision of a caffeinated nurse. "Breathe, boss, in through the nose, out through the mouth, like that time with the vending machine jam." Min-ik gasped, the medication flooding his veins like liquid clarity. His heart stuttered back to rhythm, the fog lifting just enough to see her. Not Veronica Park, the glamorous phantom he'd been chasing in his delusions, but Gal-hee, real, ridiculous, resolute Gal-hee. The woman who'd memorized his coffee order, black, no sugar, but with a splash of yesterday's optimism, who'd covered for his blank stares with improvised small talk, who'd once wrestled a malfunctioning projector during a pitch because no one interrupts your genius on my watch. The meeting dissolved into chaos, calls for security, demands for explanations, one director slipping on the spilled water like a cartoon villain. But in that suspended moment, as sirens wailed faintly from the lobby, someone had hit the panic button. Min-ik realized she'd done more than interrupt. She'd pierced the veil of his isolation, her shy chaos a lifeline in a room of calculated vipers. The vote was tabled, indefinitely, under the guise of medical emergency, buying him time to rally Dae-ju and expose the real saboteurs. Later, in the sterile hush of the company infirmary, Min-ik watched Gal-hee fidget by the window, wringing her hands like she'd committed corporate treason. "I'm sorry," she whispered, eyes downcast. "I didn't mean to make a scene. I just couldn't let you fade away in there. Not after everything." He chuckled, weak but genuine, the sound foreign in his throat. "Fade away, Gal-hee, you turned a boardroom into a circus. And saved my sorry hide in the process." He paused, the weight of unspoken debt settling. "Why, after I fired you without a backward glance?" She shrugged, a flush creeping up her neck. "Family motto. Stick by the fools who need you most. Besides, who else is going to remind you that genius starves without a decent bibimbap delivery?" In the weeks that followed, as Min-ik clawed back his position, exposing embezzlement with Gal-hee's clandestine ledger dives and Dae-ju's timely vote, their partnership bloomed into something unspoken, unbreakable. The shy secretary who'd crashed a meeting became the quiet architect of his redemption, proving that sometimes, the loudest saves come wrapped in the softest apologies. And in the quiet corridors of T&T, where ambition echoed like a hollow promise, one truth lingered: lives aren't just saved by heroes in capes, but by the unassuming souls who dare to knock when the doors bolted shut. In the polished chaos of a Chicago skyscraper, where the air smelled of ambition and overpriced cologne, the boardroom of Zenith Enterprises was a battlefield of egos. Michael Renner, the company's steely-eyed CFO, stood at the helm, his voice steady as he presented projections that could make or break their next merger. His reputation was ironclad, numbers didn't lie, and neither did he, though his recent migraines and unexplained memory lapses hinted at something sinister beneath the surface. The board, a pack of wolves in tailored suits, sensed weakness. A vote to replace him loomed, orchestrated by a rival VP with a smirk sharper than a switchblade. Enter Clara Nguyen, the mousy administrative assistant who'd been with Renner for 3 years, her presence so unobtrusive she was practically wallpaper. She wasn't on the meeting's invite list, her job was coffee runs and calendar Tetris, not corporate chess. But that morning, she'd noticed Renner's pallor, the way his hand trembled when he grabbed his briefcase. She'd also found a vial of unmarked pills in his desk drawer while restocking pens, a discovery that gnawed at her gut. Clara, who'd spent her childhood caring for a sick mother, knew the look of someone teetering on the edge. The meeting was at fever pitch when Clara slipped in, clutching a manila folder like a lifeline. "Mr. Renner, I have those expense reports." Her voice cracked, barely audible over the VP's droning about strategic realignment. Heads turned, eyebrows arched. Clara's cardigan was a size too big, her bangs a nervous curtain over her eyes, but she pressed on, driven by a hunch she couldn't shake. You didn't take your meds today, sir. I mean, I think. I saw the bottle, and..." Renner's eyes narrowed, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Meds. He hadn't been prescribed anything since the flu last winter. But before he could dismiss her, Clara, in a burst of uncharacteristic boldness, stepped closer and dropped the folder. Papers scattered, printouts of emails she'd dug up from the VP's unsecured laptop, hinting at tampered financials and a whisper of sabotage. "I didn't mean to snoop, but these don't add up, and I think someone's messing with you." The room went pin-drop silent. The VP's smirk froze, his pen tapping a guilty rhythm. Renner, head pounding, felt a wave of nausea hit, not just from stress, but from the slow drip of poison he hadn't realized was in his system. Those vitamins his rival had gifted him weeks ago, insisted he take for stress relief. Clara's instincts had been right. She'd overheard the VP's hushed call about dosage adjustments, and pieced it together, her quiet vigilance catching what no one else had. "Clara," Renner rasped, gripping the table as his vision swam, "call the nurse. Now." She didn't hesitate, darting to the phone while the board erupted into accusations and denials. The nurse arrived, confirming Renner's symptoms matched low-grade poisoning, nothing lethal yet, but enough to cloud his mind and tank his performance. Clara's interruption, her clumsy courage, had stopped it just shy of catastrophic. Security escorted the VP out, his protests drowned by the board's clamor for audits. Renner, patched up in the infirmary, watched Clara fidget by the door, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater. "Why'd you risk it?" he asked, voice rough but warm. "You could have just walked away. I'm not exactly the warm and fuzzy boss." Clara shrugged, a shy smile breaking through. "My mom always said, if you see someone drowning, you don't ask permission to throw the rope. Besides, you sign my paychecks. Her laugh was nervous, but her eyes were steady. In the aftermath, as forensic accountants tore through the VP's files and Renner's health stabilized, Clara became more than a shadow. Renner promoted her, not to some flashy title, but to a role where her quiet knack for seeing what others missed could shine. The boardroom, once a den of predators, hummed with a new respect, not just for Renner's survival, but for the unassuming woman who'd rewritten the game with a folder and a hunch. Zenith's merger went through, cleaner and stronger, and Clara's name, once a whisper, became a quiet legend in the halls. Sometimes, the smallest voices carry the loudest truths, and a single interruption can pull a life back from the brink. In the gleaming nerve center of a London financial firm, where deals were struck with the precision of a guillotine, the boardroom of Crestwood Capital was a pressure cooker. Eleanor Voss, the razor-sharp COO, stood before a wall of screens, her voice steady as she pitched a high-stakes acquisition to a room of skeptical investors. Her mind, usually a steel trap, had been fraying at the edges, dizzy spells, memory lapses, and a persistent tremor she chalked up to stress. The investors, smelling blood, were circling, ready to pull their funding if she faltered. Whispers of her instability had been seeded by a rival executive, a man with a smile like a snake and an agenda to match. Meera Patel, Eleanor's reserved assistant, hovered at the room's edge, unnoticed as always. Her job was to blend in, refill water, fetch files, and keep Eleanor's chaotic schedule from imploding. But Meera, who'd spent years observing from the sidelines, had noticed Eleanor's decline, the skipped meals, the way her hands shook when she thought no one was watching. That morning, Meera had found a strange bottle of herbal supplements in Eleanor's office, left by the rival exec with a note about boosting focus. Her gut screamed warning bells. The meeting was spiraling, investors grilling Eleanor, her responses growing sluggish, when Meera slipped in, clutching a stack of misaligned papers as a flimsy excuse. "Ms. Voss, I need your approval on these, urgently," she stammered, her voice barely cutting through the room's tension. Heads turned, irritation flashing across polished faces. Myra's cardigan was fraying, her glasses fogged from nerves, but she pressed forward, heart pounding. "Also, you didn't take your usual meds today. I think you should, now." Eleanor frowned, confused. Meds? She hadn't taken anything beyond those supplements. But Myra's wide-eyed insistence, the way she nudged the water glass away from Eleanor's hand, sparked a flicker of doubt. "Meera, what?" Eleanor started, but Meera, in a rare burst of audacity, leaned in and whispered, "The pills. They're not right. I checked the label, it's not what it says." She slid a crumpled note under the papers, scribbled with a quick search result. The supplement was laced with a sedative, dosed just enough to dull cognition over time. The room was oblivious, investors droning on, but Eleanor's pulse spiked. She'd been played. Her rival's gift was a slow sabotage, clouding her mind to erode her credibility. She stood, feigning a need for a break, and followed Meera to the hallway. "Call the infirmary," Eleanor whispered, her voice tight, "and get those pills tested. Now." Meera nodded, already dialing. The infirmary confirmed Eleanor's symptoms matched low-grade sedation, reversible but dangerous if unchecked. Back in the boardroom, Eleanor stalled, her composure a masterclass in bluffing as she deflected questions until the lab results came through. The rival's scheme unraveled when Meera, trembling but resolute, handed over the damning report to the lead investor. The room erupted, calls for investigations, the rival's career imploding in real time. In the quiet of Eleanor's office later, as the city's lights glittered below, she watched Meera fidget with a pen. "Why stick your neck out?" Eleanor asked, her tone softer than usual. "You could have just let me crash and burn." Meera shrugged, her voice small but firm. "My dad always said, if you see a fire, you don't wait for someone else to grab the extinguisher. Besides, you're the only one here who doesn't treat me like furniture." A shy smile flickered, then vanished. The acquisition went through, cleaner and stronger, with Eleanor's reputation not just intact but fortified. Meera, once invisible, became her quiet confidant, her knack for spotting cracks in the facade proving invaluable. The rival was ousted, the pills traced to a shady supplier, and Crestwood's board learned a hard lesson: never underestimate the wallflower with a hunch. In the end, Myra's timid interruption didn't just save Eleanor's career, it saved her life, proving that courage doesn't always roar, Sometimes, it's the softest voice that stops the fall.